Dan didn't know how to explain it to Lily. She was 8 years old enough to know Daddy was sick, too young to understand what terminal meant. So he didn't explain it. He handed her a sketchbook instead. "Draw me one thing every day," he said. "Anything you want. I just want to keep them all." She thought it was a game. For 14 months, she never missed a single day. A crooked sun with too many rays. The family dog, always facing the wrong way. A house with more windows than walls. Dan kept every page, even the scribbles, even the nights he was too tired to hold his eyes open long enough to look at what she'd made. After he was gone, Sarah found 7 sketchbooks stacked on his nightstand. 6 were full, cover to cover. The 7th had one more page in it than she remembered. What she did with those books reached people she would never meet in her life. And it started with a page Lily never told a single person she'd drawn. 3 months before any of this, Dan Whitfield's biggest worry was a permit delay on a job site outside Dayton, Ohio. He was 38 years old, a foreman for a construction crew, the kind of man who showed up before the coffee was ready and left after everyone else had gone home. He'd built half the houses on his own street, or fixed them, or knew the man who had. That was Dan. Useful, steady, the guy you called when something broke. Sarah taught 2nd grade at the elementary school 4 blocks from their house. She'd married Dan 11 years earlier, back when he still thought a savings account was optional, and she still thought she could change his mind about that. She'd been mostly right. They had a mortgage, a 10-year-old Honda with a check engine light that never turned off, and Lily, 8 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, obsessed with anything that had wings. It was an ordinary Tuesday when Dan told Sarah his back had been bothering him for weeks. Not the kind of thing you rush to a doctor about when you're a man who spent 20 years lifting things he shouldn't. She made him go anyway. That's what wives do. They notice the thing you're hoping will just go away on its own. The back pain wasn't a pulled muscle. It wasn't 20 years of concrete floors, either, though the doctor didn't rule that out kindly at first. 3 scans and 1 biopsy later, they were sitting in an office that smelled like hand sanitizer, across from a woman named Dr. Hensley, who had the particular calm of someone who has delivered this exact sentence more times than she can count. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. It had already reached his liver. Dan didn't hear most of what came after that. He heard months, not years. He heard Sarah's hand find his and grip it hard enough to hurt. He heard himself ask, in a voice that didn't sound like his own, whether he'd get to see Lily turn 9. You know that kind of question. The one where you already know the answer isn't going to be the one you want, but you ask it anyway, because saying it out loud is the only way to make it real enough to fight. They didn't tell Lily that first week. They told her Daddy was sick and the doctors were helping him. True enough, as far as it went. But Dan couldn't stop doing the math in his head. Birthdays he might miss, a wedding day 2 decades out he was never going to walk into, a version of his daughter at 25 who would only know him through what other people remembered about him. That was the part that kept him up at night. Not the dying, the disappearing, the idea that Lily might grow up and his voice would just fade out of her memory like a radio station losing signal. Until one day, she couldn't quite call up how he'd sounded anymore. Sarah found him at 2 in the morning, sitting at the kitchen table with a blank notebook in front of him, no idea what to write. "I don't know how to leave her enough," he said. "I don't know how to be there for stuff I won't be there for." She didn't have an answer. Neither of them did. Not yet. They told Lily 9 days after the diagnosis, sitting on the living room floor, because Sarah had read somewhere that being lower than a child helps the news land softer. They used the words a counselor had suggested, sick in a way medicine can't fully fix, going to need a lot of Daddy and Lily time. Lily asked if he was going to lose his hair like the boy in her class whose mom had breast cancer. Dan said probably yes. She nodded, filed it away the way kids file away information that hasn't hurt yet, and asked if she could still have a sleepover for her birthday. That was the strange mercy of 8 years old. The full weight of it hadn't landed on her, and Dan found himself grateful for that, even as it broke something loose in his own chest. The idea came from something small, the way most good ideas do. Lily had drawn a picture at school. A son, a stick figure family, their dog Biscuit rendered as a brown blob with legs, and brought it home taped to her folder, proud of it the way only an 8-year-old can be proud of a crayon drawing. Dan taped it to the refrigerator like he always did. Then he stood there looking at it longer than usual. He thought about all the drawings that had come before it. Years of them, thrown away or lost or buried in a box somewhere, never kept on purpose. He thought about how a child's drawing is a kind of time stamp, not just what she can see, but how she sees, at exactly this age, in exactly this year, a version of her that would be gone in 12 months whether he was there to watch it happen or not. That night, he bought a sketchbook. Plain, spiral-bound, nothing special. He sat Lily down at the kitchen table and slid it across to her like it was a gift, because to him, it was the opposite of one. It was a request. "I want to ask you something," he said. "Every day, I want you to draw me one thing. Doesn't matter what. Doesn't have to be good. I just want to keep them all." Lily tilted her head the way she did when she was deciding whether something was a rule or a game. "Every single day? Every single day. What if I don't feel like it? Then draw that. Draw not feeling like it." She laughed at that, the real kind of laugh that comes out before a kid decides whether something's supposed to be funny. She grabbed a marker and drew a circle with a frown on it right there at the table, page 1, and slid it back to him like she'd won something. Dan didn't tell her why he was really asking. He didn't say the word terminal. He let her believe it was a project, a game between the two of them, something dads do. In a way, it was easier for him to believe that too, for a few minutes at a time. What he didn't tell Sarah, not at first, was what he started doing after Lily went to bed. He'd sit alone at the table with the sketchbook, flip to that day's page, and turn it over. On the back, in small, careful handwriting, he'd write a note. Not to Lily at 8. To Lily at some age he'd never get to meet. 16, 22, 34 with kids of her own. However old she'd be when someone finally handed these books back to her, and she understood what they actually were. He wrote things he didn't know how to say out loud without his voice breaking. Things about the boy who was going to break her heart someday, and how she'd survive it. Things about the day's grief would show up uninvited, and how she should let it sit at the table instead of pretending she didn't hear the knock. He wrote about her mother, how strong she was going to have to be, and how much of that strength Lily already had in her, whether she knew it yet or not. Sarah caught him at it one night, hunched over the table at 11:30, pen in hand. She asked what he was writing. "Nothing," he said, closing the book too fast. She let it go. She had her own theories about what a dying man does alone at a kitchen table at night, and she wasn't ready to find out if any of them were right. The sketchbook filled up faster than either of them expected. Lily didn't miss a day, not even the day she had a fever of 102, when she drew a shaky orange spiral and called it the yucky feeling. By the time the first book was full, there was a second one waiting on the counter. Dan didn't say anything about it. He just kept turning pages over when no one was watching and kept writing. Chemo started in the 3rd week of February. Nobody warns you what the waiting room looks like. The fluorescent lights, the recliners lined up like a strange kind of classroom, the quiet punctuated by beeping machines, and the occasional forced laugh from someone trying to make the person next to them feel less afraid. Dan sat through 4-hour infusions with Sarah in the chair beside him and a stack of insurance paperwork in her lap that never seemed to get any shorter. Nobody warns you about the money either. Sarah started doing math she never wanted to learn, deductibles, out-of-pocket maximums, the gap between what the hospital billed and what the insurance actually covered. She picked up extra tutoring hours after school. Dan, who could barely stand some days, kept trying to go into work anyway, until his supervisor, a decent man named Carl who'd known Dan for 15 years, told him to stop coming in, that his job would be there whenever, or if, he was ready. They both understood what "if" meant, even though neither of them said it out loud. You know this part too, maybe. Not the cancer, necessarily. but the version of it that shows up in every family eventually. The moment the bills stack up faster than the hope does, and you have to decide, quietly, which one you're going to keep feeding. Through all of it, the sketchbook came to the hospital. Lily drew the infusion room once. Dan hooked up to a pole with 3 bags hanging off it, rendered in her careful 8-year-old hand as a kind of octopus with square heads. She drew the nurses. She drew the parking garage they always got lost in. Nothing was too small or too strange to end up on a page. And that was exactly the point, though she still didn't know it. One of the hospice nurses who started coming to the house that spring was a woman named Ruth, early 60s, 22 years in the job, the kind of steady presence that made even bad news feel survivable in the room. Ruth had seen a lot of families try to manage a terminal diagnosis around a young child. Most of them erred toward silence, toward shielding, toward waiting for a right time to explain things that never actually arrived on schedule. She'd never seen anything quite like the sketchbooks. Most people either say too much or too little, Ruth told Sarah one evening, sitting at the kitchen table while Dan napped upstairs. He found a third thing to do. He's letting her process this at her own pace, in her own language, without either of you having to hand her words she's not ready for. Sarah hadn't thought about it that way. To her, some days, the ritual looked like avoidance dressed up as a project, a way for Dan to keep from having the harder conversation. Other days, watching Lily concentrate over a blank page with her tongue between her teeth, it looked like the only conversation that mattered. Dan's decline wasn't a straight line. There were good weeks that felt almost like a reprieve, energy enough for a walk around the block, an appetite that came back just long enough to make everyone hope a little too hard. And there were weeks that took everything. When he slept 16 hours and woke up thinner than the day before, when Sarah found herself doing the arithmetic Ruth had warned her about. Not if, but when, and how much time was actually left to spend it. Through the good weeks and the bad ones, the sketchbook sat on the nightstand every night, waiting. Lily brought it to him even on the days he could barely open his eyes to look. "I'll look at it tomorrow," he'd whisper, and she'd nod like that was a perfectly reasonable answer, and set it down beside him, page turned up, waiting for morning. He always turned it over before she saw. He always wrote something on the back before he let himself sleep. The scan in June was supposed to be routine. Dr. Hensley's face told them before she said a word, the particular stillness of someone about to say something she's dreading. The cancer hadn't slowed down. If anything, it had found new ground. Weeks, she told them now. Not months. Weeks. Dan's older brother Michael flew in from Denver 2 days later. He was the kind of older brother who showed up loud and left quiet. A contractor himself, built like Dan but 10 years harder around the eyes. The kind of man who fixed problems with his hands because it was easier than talking about the ones he couldn't fix that way. He hugged Dan too long at the door, the way people do when they're trying not to cry in front of someone who has less time to worry about their crying. Michael didn't understand the sketchbook. Not really. On his second night in town, he found Dan hunched over the table again, writing on the back of a page, and he finally said what he'd apparently been holding in since he landed. "You don't think this is going to hurt her more?" Michael said, quiet, but not gentle. "Making her draw for you every single day while you're..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "She's going to open one of these books in 10 years, and it's going to wreck her." Dan didn't get angry. He was too tired for angry, most days, and this wasn't a new thought. He'd had it himself, alone, more than once. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe in 10 years she opens it, and she's not wrecked. Maybe she just finally gets to hear me say something I never had the guts to say to her face while I still had a face." Michael didn't have an answer for that. Neither of them said much else that night. The thing that finally settled it, for Dan, if not entirely for Michael, happened 3 days later. Lily came down to breakfast with her sketchbook already finished for the day, which almost never happened before 9 in the morning. She slid it across the table, the way she always did, proud in the specific, quiet way she got when she thought a drawing was one of her better ones. It wasn't a son. It wasn't the dog. It was a wedding. A girl in a white dress that took up half the page, and beside her, holding her arm, a man in a suit with the same brown hair Dan had, the same tall, slightly crooked way of standing he'd had his whole life. She'd drawn her own wedding day, years from now, with her father walking her down the aisle, because in her mind, that was simply what was going to happen. Nobody had told her otherwise. Nobody was going to. Dan sat very still for a long moment. Sarah, pouring coffee behind him, saw his shoulders go rigid and understood exactly what he was looking at without needing to see the page herself. "Is that good, Daddy?" Lily asked, already a little unsure, the way kids get when an adult's face doesn't match what they expected. "It's the best one yet," Dan said, and his voice held. Somehow it held. "Can I keep this one out a little extra long before I put it away?" She said sure, pleased, and went to get dressed for school, already thinking about something else entirely, the way children mercifully do. Dan sat at the table another 20 minutes after she left, the drawing in front of him, not moving. When Sarah finally sat down beside him, he didn't try to explain it. He just turned the page over and started writing, longer than usual, the pen barely lifting from the paper, while she sat with him in silence and let him. That night, he told Michael he understood the concern. He also told him, gently, that the sketchbook wasn't going to stop, not for anyone's comfort, including his own. By late July, Dan mostly stayed in bed. Hospice had moved a hospital bed into the living room, near the window, so he could still see the maple tree in the front yard turning the first hints of a color it wouldn't fully become until he was gone. Ruth came by most days now. Sarah had stopped going back to work entirely, using what was left of her leave, doing the math on that too, though she never said so out loud. Lily still brought the sketchbook every evening. Some nights Dan could sit up and look at the page, ask her a question or two about it. Why the sky was purple, why the dog had 6 legs that day, and she'd explain with the patient seriousness of an artist defending a choice. Other nights, he was too far gone into exhaustion or morphine to do more than turn his head slightly toward her. She never stopped bringing it. Nobody had to remind her. There was a night near the end. Sarah would only ever describe it to Ruth, never really to anyone else, because she didn't trust herself to tell it without falling apart, when Dan couldn't open his eyes at all. His breathing had changed by then, the way Ruth had gently warned them it would, slower, with longer gaps that made the whole room hold still until the next breath finally came. Lily walked in with her sketchbook the way she always did, ready to show him the day's page. Sarah started to explain, started to say maybe not tonight, sweetheart, Daddy's resting, and then stopped, because Lily had already figured something out on her own, in the specific intuitive way children sometimes understand what adults are still working up the courage to say. She didn't try to wake him. She didn't ask him to look. She walked to the side of the bed, and very carefully, very gently, she laid the open sketchbook down on his chest, page facing up, the way you'd lay a blanket over someone who was cold. "So you can still keep it," she said quietly, "even if you can't look right now." Sarah stood in the doorway with her hand over her mouth, unable to make a sound. Dan's eyes didn't open, but his hand moved, slow, unsteady, until it found the edge of the sketchbook and rested there, fingers curled against the cover, like he was holding onto it the way you'd hold onto a hand. He died 2 nights later, just after 3 in the morning, with Sarah beside him and the 7th sketchbook, the one they'd started only a few weeks earlier, sitting closed on the nightstand where it had been every night since the first one. 6 books stood finished in the drawer beneath it. The 7th had days left in it that nobody had filled yet. Ruth was the one who gently told Sarah, sometime after dawn, once the hardest calls had been made and the house had gone quiet in that particular way houses go quiet after someone leaves them for good, that she should decide, whenever she was ready, what to do with the books. Not that day, not that week, whenever. Sarah didn't touch them for 11 days. She walked past the nightstand the way you walk past anything that's too heavy to pick up yet. Some things need to sit for a while before you're strong enough to open them. On the 12th day, she finally sat down at the kitchen table, alone, with all 7 sketchbooks stacked in front of her, and opened the first one. The first page was the sun with too many rays, the one Lily had drawn at the very beginning, back when none of them had said the word terminal out loud in front of her even once. Sarah smiled at it despite herself. Then, out of some instinct she couldn't name, she turned it over. She almost missed the handwriting at first, small, cramped, pressed close to the spine like Dan had been trying to fit as much as possible onto a space that was never meant to hold this much. She read the first line, and her hands went still. To Lily, whenever you're old enough for this to make sense. I don't know how old that is yet. I'm guessing. Sarah sat at that table for 4 hours. She turned over every page in every book, one by one, and on the back of nearly every single drawing, there was a note in Dan's handwriting, dated, sometimes just a sentence, sometimes half a page, each one addressed to a version of Lily that didn't exist yet. Lily at 13, angry at the world for reasons she wouldn't be able to name. Lily at 17, deciding whether to go to the college near home or the one 4 states away. Lily on a day Dan called simply the bad one. No further explanation, just the promise that whatever the bad day turned out to be, she would survive it, and that surviving it didn't mean she had to do it without missing him. He'd written to her about heartbreak she hadn't experienced yet, about the specific ache of watching her mother grow older without him there to share the worry, about money, practical, unromantic paragraphs on saving what she could, on not being afraid to ask for help, on the difference between being proud and being alone. He'd written about faith and doubt, about the nights he'd lain awake trying to figure out what he actually believed happened after this, and admitting, more than once, that he didn't fully know, and that it was all right if she didn't either. And there was this, on the back of a drawing from April, a lopsided rendering of their house, with smoke curling from the chimney in a way real smoke never quite does. I used to think my job was to build things that would last. Houses. A good name. Something you could point to. Turns out that's not what lasts. You're what lasts. Every one of these pages is me trying to build one more day of being your father, even after I'm not able to be in the room for it. I don't know if that's enough. I hope it's enough. Sarah didn't cry, not at first. She sat very still, the way you do when something is too large to process in the ordinary way, and read it again. Then she read the rest, one book after another, until the light outside had shifted from afternoon to evening and Lily had come home from a friend's house and found her mother at the table surrounded by open sketchbooks, tears finally moving. Are those mine? Lily asked, not fully understanding what she was looking at yet. They're your dad's, Sarah said. For you. All of them. She didn't show Lily the notes that night. Some of them, she thought, might need to wait for exactly the ages Dan had written them for. A letter about heartbreak wasn't meant for an 8-year-old, no matter how much love was behind it. But she photographed every page, front and back, that same week, because some instinct in her, grief or fear, or something steadier than either, told her these books were too important to exist in only one fragile, physical form. It was while she was photographing the 7th book, the unfinished one, that she found the page that didn't belong to Dan's handwriting at all. The 7th sketchbook had 9 finished pages when Dan died. 9 days worth of drawings, each one turned over in his familiar cramped hand. Sarah had counted them without meaning to, the way grief makes you count things you have no reason to count. 9 pages. And then, when she reached the 10th, there was a drawing there too. She hadn't put it there. She knew, immediately, whose hand had. It showed 2 figures, one small, one tall, standing beside what looked like a bed, except the tall figure was drawn slightly above it, not lying in it, with 2 rough lines coming off his back that could have been a code, or could have been something else entirely, depending on how you wanted to read an 8-year-old's crayon work. Underneath, in Lily's careful, still-forming handwriting, the kind that still reversed the occasional letter. It said, "I drew you one more so you don't run out." Sarah understood, with a kind of quiet devastation that didn't need to announce itself, exactly when this page had been made. It was dated. Lily always dated her pages, a habit Dan had taught her early on. So future you knows when this happened. And the date was the night Dan died, not the morning after, when someone might have gently suggested it to her. That same night, sometime in the hours after Sarah had finally pulled her weeping, exhausted 8-year-old away from her father's bedside and put her to bed, Lily had gotten up, found the sketchbook, and kept the ritual going entirely on her own. Nobody asked her to. Nobody even knew she had, until now. Sarah sat with that drawing for a long time before she turned it over, half expecting nothing on the back, since Lily had no way of knowing that was where the notes lived. There was nothing written there, just a blank page. But there was something else, a small, damp circle in one corner, dried into the paper, the unmistakable shape of where a tear had landed and been left to dry rather than wiped away. Sarah thought about Ruth's advice, sitting there in the low kitchen light. Whenever you're ready. She thought about the 11 days she'd spent walking past this exact stack of books, unable to face them, and how she might have gone on avoiding them indefinitely if grief hadn't eventually made the silence louder than the fear. She thought about Dan's line, "You're what lasts," and about a version of lasting that didn't just mean Dan's voice reaching forward into Lily's future, but Lily's own hand reaching back, on the worst night of her small life, to keep a promise nobody had asked her to keep. That was the moment something shifted in Sarah. Not resolved. Grief doesn't resolve on a schedule, and she knew that better than most people her age already, having buried a husband younger than either of their parents had been when they lost anyone at all. But something in her stopped being purely private grief and started, slowly, to become something else. A question. What do you do with something this true, once you've seen it? Do you keep it in a drawer, safe and sealed, and yours alone? Or does something this honest, this stripped of performance, belong to more people than just the family that made it? She didn't have an answer that night. She closed the 7th sketchbook, careful with the still fragile last page, and sat in the dark kitchen a while longer, thinking about her husband, her daughter, and the 7 books that had somehow become the truest record of a marriage and a family that neither of them could have written on purpose. Grief has its own timeline, and nobody, not Ruth, not Michael, not the well-meaning friends who kept dropping off casseroles nobody had the appetite for, tried to rush Sarah toward a decision. For nearly 2 months, the sketchbooks stayed exactly where she'd left them, stacked on the kitchen counter now instead of Dan's nightstand. Close enough to see every day, too close to fully ignore. What kept pulling her back to them wasn't really about sharing. At first, it was simpler than that. She just wanted to read Dan's handwriting again. There's a specific kind of ache in missing the physical evidence of someone. The shape their hand made when they pressed a pen to paper, tired, at midnight, thinking about you. Sarah found herself rereading the notes the way other widows might replay old voicemails, just to hear him again, in whatever form was left. It was Ruth who first said the word share out loud, sitting at that same kitchen table on one of her last scheduled visits, technically finished with her hospice duties, but stopping by anyway, the way good ones do. "I've done this work 17 years, Ruth said. "I have never once seen a family handle dying the way your family handled it. Most people don't know what to do with the time. Dan knew exactly what to do with his. It feels like it's ours though," Sarah said. "Too private for anyone else." "It is yours," Ruth agreed. "That doesn't mean it can't also help somebody else's family through the exact thing yours just went through. Those aren't opposites." Sarah thought about that for weeks. She thought about the parents she'd seen in the pediatric oncology waiting room during Dan's appointments. A different kind of terrible, but the same question in every face. How do I make sure they know how much I love them in the time I have left? If you've made it this far with me, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel, and join us every day. Stories like Dan's are the reason this channel exists. The quiet ones, the ones that don't make headlines, the ones that happen at kitchen tables instead of in front of cameras. If you've ever sat with someone at the end, you already understand exactly why Sarah couldn't stop thinking about those 7 books. She finally posted 3 photographs late one Tuesday night. Not the notes themselves, which felt too intimate to hand to strangers, but pictures of 2 drawings side by side with the dates and a short caption explaining what the ritual had been. She almost deleted it 4 separate times before she let it stay up. She went to bed expecting maybe a dozen kind comments from people she already knew. By morning, the post had traveled past anyone she recognized. Messages arrived from people she'd never met. A hospice chaplain in Tennessee who wanted to recommend the idea to families on his caseload. A father in Oregon recently diagnosed with the same cancer that had taken Dan, asking, almost shyly, whether it would work for a son instead of a daughter. And then there was a woman named Rebecca from a town in Michigan Sarah had never heard of, whose husband had been given a similar timeline 4 months earlier. Rebecca wrote that she'd been paralyzed for weeks, not knowing how to give her own 2 kids something to hold on to besides fear. She'd read Sarah's post twice, bought sketchbooks that same afternoon, and started the exact same ritual with her children that night. "I don't know you," Rebecca wrote, "but you just gave my kids a way to say goodbye to their father that doesn't only feel like losing him. Thank you doesn't cover it." Sarah read that message standing in her kitchen, in the same spot where she'd once found Dan hunched over a sketchbook at midnight, hiding what he was really doing. She realized this had grown into exactly the kind of lasting thing Dan had written about on the back of that April page, without ever imagining it would happen quite like this. Within a year, what started as one post became something neither Sarah nor Ruth had set out to build. Working with the same hospice organization that had cared for Dan, Sarah helped launch a small program called Draw Me One Thing, sketchbooks and simple guidance, given free to families facing a terminal diagnosis with young children in the house. No pressure, no script, just the same quiet instruction Dan had given Lily at that kitchen table. Draw me one thing every day, anything you want. I just want to keep them all. By the following spring, more than 400 families across a dozen states had a set of their own. Sarah never claimed to have invented anything profound. She always said the same thing when someone called her brave or inspiring, words she never quite got comfortable wearing. Dan built this. I just made sure it didn't stay in a drawer. Lily is 10 now. She still draws every day, though the ritual has quietly become something else, not a task for someone else anymore, just hers. Some nights, when Sarah tucks her in, she finds a new page taped above Lily's bed, unprompted, no explanation offered or needed. A house with too many windows. A man with a slightly crooked way of standing. She knows what terminal means now. Nobody had to sit her down and explain it. She read it, eventually, on the back of a page addressed to a version of herself a little older than she was. And she understood, the way children sometimes understand things faster than the adults protecting them expect, that her father hadn't been keeping her drawings all those months. He'd been making sure she'd always have a way to keep him. If this one stayed with you, stay with us, subscribe, and share it with 5 people who might need it today. Tell us in the comments what you'd want to leave behind for someone you love, and what story you think we should tell next.